Let's skip the motivational posters a bit before we spin into the intro this time. When was the last time someone told you to bet on yourself? And I know we brought that up before, but think about that. When someone said that, you wanted to look that person in the eye and say, okay, but what is the actual formula under the hood? That gap between a corporate slogan and an actual execution step is where the careers stall.
I think if you can't invest in yourself, who can you invest in?
So this week, I'm bringing two massive real-world data sets to the table to solve that equation, at least hopefully. The first is a high-level operational review from Chris Paul, yes, CP3, the 12-time NBA All-Star and Olympic gold medalist who just finished a historic 21-year career. And the second is an enterprise blueprint from Brandon J. Hurst, a magna cum laude graduate of Alabama State University who holds a Master's of Business in Finance. He also serves as the founder of Birth of Dream Ventures and operates as a corporate executive commanding two of the highest grossing franchise footprints in urban New York, which is highly impressive in my opinion, including the borough's first structurally complex anchor location directly adjacent to Barclays Center. Again, amazing.
Yeah, these two couldn't be any more different. On paper, a max contract point guard and a multi-unit enterprise operator, they don't share a foxhole or even a spreadsheet. They're completely on different sides of the spectrum. So I'm interested to see how you're going to pull this together, JB.
On paper, you're exactly right. But in practice, they run the exact same mechanics, which is quite amazing. And when I sat in this webinar, and that's what I extracted from this. But both of these leaders prove that betting on yourself isn't an emotional leap of faith. It's a clinical method, a sequence of small, data-driven survivable bets where the downside is completely hedged and the upside belongs entirely to your personal profit and loss statement.
Now, I've always said great entrepreneurs, they're based off of making great decisions, and it's just a whole bunch of small great ones. It's not like one big great decision. It's multiple great decisions in a row.
Yeah, so it's 4 blocks. So segment 1, we're going to go over Chris Paul's structural transition from the court to the boardroom. Segment 2 is Brandon Hurst's risk mitigation framework. And then segment 3, we're going to touch on the lifecycle architecture inside of Hurst's playbook, which is titled The 5 Seasons of Leadership. Then we're going to close that out with the synthesis of all of this, what it means for your career architecture in 2026.
Let's jump into this, man. This sounds pretty interesting. Let's go.
All right.
The broken handle is for informational purposes only. Nothing here is legal, financial, or career advice.
Welcome back to The Broken Handle. It's a week after July 4th holiday, and welcome never back from a nice vacation and break. Will, how you been, man?
I've been good. I just came back from the West Coast with the fam. We went up to Santa Barbara and all the way down to San Diego. Got to see a lot of my family. I got some brothers and sisters out there that live there. For you who don't know that, I'm originally from Los Angeles. That's kind of where I like to spend some of my vacation time, to hang out. A beautiful vacation. Hard to come back, but hey, here we are, and we're going to do our best efforts to take care of you guys today.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I just hung out, battled the dogs, and relaxed and enjoyed some time with the families. But welcome back to all of our listeners and any new listeners as well.
Yeah, welcome to the new listeners. I noticed our numbers are going up, speaking to that point, JB, and I'm grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you for tuning in every week.
So let's go ahead and look at the career track of Chris Paul. 12-time All-Star, 21 seasons. His core point to LinkedIn's Daniel Roth hits our exact lane. The old textbook model of a single career for life is completely dead. He notes that you have to start building your next move the exact same day you start your first job. Now, some of us are mid-career, but this still should be able to apply.
I'd imagine this framework could work from either side as long as you have the strategy, right, JB? This sounds pristine when you're a superstar athlete, but let's look at the operational load. He was running investment portfolios in media studios while active on an 82-game seasonal calendar. Why take on that stress when you could be just relaxing and enjoying the good life of an MBAR?
Well, because he respected the absolute statistical shelf life of his primary asset, which is his MBA career. Paul noted in the webinar that his advisors forced him to treat every single contract like it was his absolute last, because the average MBA career was only about 3 years, which is shocking to hear when I sat on that webinar. I didn't know that.
That is really wild. I would think NFL would be even shorter, but looking at that stat, it's 7 years in the NFL. So I'm guessing that playing basketball might be a little bit harder on the body, which is hard to believe, but yes.
He looked at the data and realized his primary revenue engine, again, the MBA, could hit that black hole at age 22 because he got in the MBA at 19. Pretty young, but pretty impressive too.
This kind of takes us a direct line back to episode 1 module on the freezing labor market and the ghost job epidemic. We told our listeners then, you cannot wait around for the industry shift or an automated layoff to hand you an expiration date. Look for the writing on the wall and address it. Paul built his entire corporate escape hatch while he was still in his primary plane and was still cruising at altitude.
Exactly. He didn't wait until retirement, but again, still could work in retirement, but he started 15 years earlier because he refused to get complacent. In his third year, he joined the Players Union Executive Committee to master the underlying enterprise infrastructure. So the multi-billion-dollar TV rights, the media distribution models, and corporate sponsorships that go on with the NBA. He went on to serve as union president for 8 years, physically building their New York corporate headquarters from scratch while leading an intense collective bargaining negotiations against billionaire team owners.
I want you to stop right there, bro. How do you have enough hours in the day to achieve something like this, man? You're thinking about the traveling schedule that these guys have. They're going city to city every other week, 84 games. You're basically on the road half that time, not to mention all the practices, not to mention doing your own physical training, not to mention your nutrition, not to mention your family life. Where does this guy fit it all in, Jay?
To me, I'd have to summarize it as he has the hustler mentality. And those people who hustle hard and just get irons in the fire, that's the winners. We have some things that fall through, but you have so many opportunities, just all the tranches, essentially, if you want to use a special word for it.
Yeah.
And he did that. So Roth from LinkedIn, he pushed Chris on that for his personal operating system. And Paul summarized it as a relentless routine of constant learning and aggressive curiosity.
No, I love that. I love that curiosity, JB. That side of it. It's like this guy couldn't be stopped on any direction because he personally drove himself by his own curiosity to succeed, it sounds like.
And one of the things that we touched on too, and you're actually doing this as well, is he actively hunted down a master mentor. He made the unglamorous cold calls and he physically asked to sit in offices just to look under the hood of real world businesses to his mentor so he can be involved.
But again, where did this guy find the time to do this? This is the part that I keep going back to. And everybody that I know that is successful somehow finds that magical 25th and 26th hour of the day where they're able to apply these dynamics. And I'm just wondering how many hours can there be in a day? But if we do a quick reality check, he's Chris Paul. You would think doors fly open for a celebrity. Does that protocol translate to a professional who doesn't have like an all-star resume, JB?
Yeah, so during that webinar, they pounced on that exact objection. Paul responded was that standard platforms like LinkedIn democratize that exact reach. But persistence is the actual filter, he said. He noted that people track your consistency and how you show up online over time. And we've touched on that as well with your type of posts you do, because LinkedIn has that social media factor and people watch that. So he explained that being famous can actually hold people back because success makes them afraid to put themselves out there and look like they don't know what they're doing. So his fix was simple. You intentionally push yourself into uncomfortable rooms and accept that you do not know everything.
It's hard to believe that even a celebrity at this level with that kind of funding would feel uncomfortable in those rooms. But we have to relate back to the human nature of it, right? He's
Correct.
Still human. And so that uncomfortableness he had to overcome, and not only on the court, but in the business world at the same time, man. I admire this guy so much.
And the most critical pivot in Paul's model is the transition from transactional endorsements to a strict asset equity. Think about that and let's sit on that for a little bit. Early in his career, brands would come up to him and offered him quick cash just to hold a product and smile for a photo op. Hey, you're Chris Paul, hold this. We're going to get money off of it. We'll give you some money. So his initial reactions as a 20-year-old, which we all were in the same instantaneous gratification concept, it was instantaneous. It was transactional. Grab the money immediately. But as his corporate literacy scaled, his requirements changed, as it should, and he realized that. He realized that the modern elite professional wants absolute ownership to help build and scale the product from the inside. And that's a shift that we're seeing in college sports as well with the NIL, name, image, likeness. Mm-hmm. So he now uses a corporate filter. If he doesn't believe in the asset lifecycle fundamentally, and Shaq, I think, has the same concept, but he'll reject the contract outright. So no matter how massive the short-term payday is, he'll reject it if he doesn't have that fundamental belief in that product. And he literally evaluates deals as a consumer, asking if he would want to see his own face on that product bag walking into a retail store. So short-term plays are capped to like 3 to 5 years if he does them. But for major assets like his snack portfolio, he builds for multi-decade longevity. So again, short-term, long-term, multiple irons.
Now, this is really very unique in its way because he has the hindsight And he had it at a very young age to realize the long game is the better game. One of the things that I find unique in this is I'm wondering if it's a little bit more comfortable for him to be able to make those executions or decisions based off the fact that he can fail and he has the funding to fail over and over again. But it doesn't seem that way based off of his story, because he's literally, it looks like this guy's laddered his way through success time and time and time again. And this I want to stop it right there because this is a direct continuation of our episode 3 module on absolute self-direction. We spent an entire segment arguing that the ladder is broken and you have to operate it as your own independent business entity, driving equity and value, even when you are working inside someone else's infrastructure. So not only has he built his own brand, but he's also allowed himself to be in other people's brands and proliferate. That's really interesting stuff. Just seeing this guy as a business lead and an NBA player. This guy looks like he likes to excel and succeed. And he's got that rare air where it feels right. And he doesn't want to leave it. And he's making great decisions to stay there.
Everything that you touched on is the exact same muscle. So owner thinking is simply self-direction with standard accounting principles attached. So Paul's rule, if you don't fundamentally control or believe in the product life cycle, step away from the table, right? Well, he's managing his time and resources because he has a framework now and he sticks to it.
Well, and you said it earlier on, and this is I'm immediately upon hearing this quote that you just stated, we started at the very beginning of this episode about talking about if you can't bet on yourself, who can you bet on? Or if you can't believe in your own product or brand, who can you believe in? And it sounds to me like this is ingrained in his DNA. Like this is what this guy believes in 100%. Every decision I make affects my brand or my course of direction in succession, right? Absolutely impressive, JB. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's what it is from his perspective, but there's the deliberate unlearning and his strategic listening that he learned. That's the other part of that as well.
Yeah, to that point, a career strategist in the Cannes audience, Carly Vivian, pinned him with a phenomenal question. What did you have to deliberately unlearn in the corporate boardroom that made you a lead on the court?
Chris's answer was highly illuminating. In elite sports, performance requires constant high-velocity vocal assertion, and that's the role he played. You're dictating coverage, calling plays, and moving chess pieces manually. But Paul noted that in an enterprise boardroom, the dominant skill is actually extreme strategic listening, and shifting from absolute vocal control to deep listening was a critical behavioral pivot for a macro operator like he was. So the skill of listening is something that we probably need to touch on because people just think, oh, I'm listening, I'm hearing you. It's like you have to actually listen.
This goes back to the old saying is we have 2 ears for a reason and only 1 mouth, right? Because we should listen twice as much as we talk. And yes. I think in this particular case, obviously understanding the depth, and this is something I would say is one of your strengths, JB. Like you definitely are very good at listening and observing, taking in all the facts, putting the data points together, and then creating that picture. And I think that's what he does as well. Is he listens over time, finds out if it's something that's brand worthy, and then he decides whether he wants to execute. Go ahead. You were saying. I'm sorry.
He took all that strategic listening and he applied that discipline to organizational design to ensure he was never the operational constraint. Now, that's a key thing you were just talking about. How did he have all the time to do that? It's because of that. So Paul explicitly stated that scaling requires a willingness to delegate to a team built with complementary, diverse skill sets. And I've experienced that. I had a team with high velocity, high output, and I followed some of this unknowingly, but reading this kind of helps solidify it for me personally.
Well, no, I think too is understanding that you don't know everything and you don't have to run the ball all the time. And I think this actually answers the question that I was asking all along is how does one man do all this? He doesn't. He finds qualified people that can support his mission statement and his vision, and he works with them and he delegates work out to them. That makes so much more sense. And again, I've never seen a successful business that didn't.
Yeah. And he stated simply, you cannot scale an enterprise by hiring clones of yourself, which very sound advice, right? On the court, if everyone can shoot, but nobody has size, then the whole system on the court collapses. So who's going to stop who's going to play defense? He hired a proven corporate president, David Schwab, to run the daily infrastructure of his Chris Paul collective. So he structurally removed as a bottleneck.
He realized that he needed help. A lot of times that's overlooked in every organization is people are afraid to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And they think that they have to take it on. And just imagine going to your point about the basketball court. If everybody's a great shot, but nobody has a vision or a direction, how are you going to achieve that? And I think that's where Chris Paul steps in. He can do it on the basketball court and he can do it in business.
Yep, exactly. All right. Our next segment jumps into Brandon Hurst's strategic risk framework. This corporate baseline pairs perfectly with our second source. Let's establish his credentials really clearly. So Brandon, he was a magna cum laude graduate of Alabama State University. He holds an MBA in finance. He serves as the founder of Birth of Dream Ventures and operates as a corporate executive commanding two of the highest grossing franchise footprints in urban New York, including the borough's first structured anchor location. Hurst proves that these business rules work long before you have a real capital. For him, this framework started with a simple hustle at 12 years old. Again, that hustler mindset. He took a jar of dill pickles from his mom's kitchen and sold them to neighbors for 50 cents each. He had the mindset back then, hey, I need to make money. What can I do? What do I have? So he found a gap. He found a product. He went out and tried to do something. But of course, when his mom found out, she literally slapped him for selling the pickles underpriced. That's quite the lesson to learn. So she looked at how big they were and told him he should have charged at least $1 minimum.
Slapped for an amateur mistake in marketing before he even hit high school, bro. Like this, and you know, the crazy part is at 12 years old, I literally couldn't even pick out the right shoes to go outside. Like I was looking for pairs. To have business acumen or even to have that hustle mentality. That's a nurture thing in the sense of like where you're surrounded by hustlers all the time. It's interesting to me because these two are attacking it from very different sides of the plane, but they're using the same mindset and framework, JB.
Just looking at his life cycle, he shared on the webinar, which is really impressive that he actually gets that close with his personal life. So he identified this is how it was when I grew up. He lost his mom when he was only 12, and he was the one who walked into the house and found her when she'd had a heart attack, which is, I can only imagine at 12 years old or 13 years old to find your parent in that situation. He was then raised by an aunt, and they eventually lost their home to foreclosures, one hit after another. But to keep going to the same high school so he would stay on track with his education, he spent the last 2 years of that waking up every single day to manage a 4-hour round trip commute on public transit. That's how committed he was to his education. That's highly impressive in my opinion at that age.
I can't imagine there's many kids that would have this type of willingness to want to get educated. And I'll tell you too, as far as like having that kind of loss, the directions that could spin you in any direction. But this guy didn't let it change his compass from pointing north and staying on path, right? It's absolutely an amazing story.
Yeah, and he wound up graduating in top 20 in his class still through all of that trial and tribulation. He won a full presidential scholarship at Alabama State University, and then he moved out there without ever taking a step on that campus. So just taking big risks, big leaps all from day one.
I think he was not afraid to take those risks. And obviously consistently made those great decisions that we were talking about time and time again, you know, over that entire process. Now, again, I can't reiterate this enough. I've seen this happen in multiple different people's life stories where they negate to go one way and then go the other. And it's in the absolute opposite side of where they want to be, or they consistently stay true north and they keep working toward those goals. This guy's story is amazing, JB. It's absolutely inspiring, in fact.
I'm honored that I got to sit in the webinar with him, and I'm like, wow, I learned a lot from that. And he even has a 3 protocol of execution. So he breaks it down. His entire strategic model is 3 sequential internal protocols. Yes, I can. Yes, I will. And yes, anyway. It's pretty simple. 3 statements are like, it's all yeses that creates positivity.
Well, yeah, to your point, though, is like how many more doors do you get when you say yes versus no? Because as you say no, each door closes. So the more you say no, the more doors you have no opportunity to. So you have no way to bridge those gaps. I love this mentality, the yes, I can, because even if you're not open to the opportunity, at least hear it out. Like going back to your listening process of the basketball player earlier in our conversation, it's like just listen to the opportunity. And even if you don't think it's worth your time, yes, anyway, just be present. Just be present.
Yeah, and to define those further, he explained them as yes, I can means you absolutely refuse to let traumatic events or a tough background dictate how your life turns out. That's powerful, dude.
It goes back to that 2 type of people mentality where it's like, I can either use this to inspire me or I can use it to demotivate myself. And I tell you what, I hate to say this, but I feel like some of the best people I know that succeed, they have a chip on their shoulder.
Yep.
They do.
That's
and they
so
carry
true.
That, and they carry that chip because they feel like they have to prove it to themselves or to somebody else. In most cases, I'd like to say it's for themselves. But I also believe they also want to prove it. And I think in his case, I believe he wanted to do it for his mom and everything that she gave him and his auntie who helped him, to all the people that committed to his success. I feel like he had no choice but to move forward, JB. And the fact that he did and excelled is amazing to me.
Yeah, and I'm going to probably go a little off the cuff and I might add to that in the fact that I'm seeing this protocol of 3 yeses. So I'm thinking he might have been told no a lot. And he wasn't going to be accepting of that.
No, that, and that could be it too.
That's reading between the lines. There's no confirmation.
No, but it could be though too, because I feel like it's like in human nature, right? For us, if somebody tells us that we can't do something, the first thing we want to do is come up with a solution on how we can achieve that thing. Why? Yep. Because nobody likes to be told no.
Exactly.
Nobody. I don't care even if you've been told no a million times. It's in our nature to want to succeed. It's in our nature to want to change the purview of how people see us. It's in our nature to want to change the way we're perceived by others, right, JB?
Yes.
And I think with this guy, I honestly think this guy was just self-driven from the gate. I think it's in his DNA. And I think success, he only saw one plane view and one glass plane view, and that's to succeed.
Yep, I agree. I mean, looking at his history, it's just, that's...
I mean, how could it not be? You know what I mean? I mean, decades of just making the right decision over and over and over again.
Yeah. So the final two protocols, so the other one again was yes, I can, which we touched on. So the next one is yes, I will. And that was triggered when his formal university academic advisors openly dismissed and questioned his choice to take an entry-level operation role at a restaurant system post-graduation. So there's that no kinda.
What I gather from this is he's like, I'm going to do it my own way.
Yeah.
So you can sit here and you can perceive that I'm not going to succeed based off of the trail I'm blazing, but I only have one way, and that's up. So you can go ahead and judge me all you want. Your perception means nothing to me. I'm going to succeed. So yes, I will succeed.
Yep. And he proved them wrong, obviously.
Once again, right? Not surprising at all in this particular, this guy's an absolute rock star.
He's a stud, dude. He's a stud.
Yeah.
The last one is yes, anyway. That was executed when he stepped up to launch a multi-million-dollar urban corporate franchise footprint at 26. Wow. Think about that. Let that sink in.
Dude, that in itself is bananas. That is off the charts. Like, you just look at your resume. Hey, bro, what'd you do at 26? I think I graduated and I was working at like a telecom business. And he's like, nah, man, I just stood up a multi-million-dollar company at 26. Not to mention that I had no one to help me do it. Not to mention that I had to overcome multiple obstacles. Not to mention that I asked nobody for anything and I just drove myself to make this happen. How amazing, bro.
Yeah, and he had no historical business ownership at all, right? He just had his degree in hand and his drive.
Yeah, that puts a serious seatbelt on the whole concept of risk aversion. This guy doesn't even know what risk is. I don't even think he thinks about risk. He's just like, nah, success is the way. The phrase yes anyway doesn't mean you're not operating without fear. And in this particular case of his, I would say, I think he realizes fear is a thing, but I don't think he lets it drive his decision process, right? And that's what I really like to dig into. But it also means that you can still, you're moving with velocity while the fear variables are still active. So in a nutshell, this premise sounds like it's opening your mind to accepting risk, but dismissing it because the thought of success is so much greater than the thought of ever failing. I love that, bro. I absolutely love that saying, because literally when you have that type of mindset, you can't, even when you fail, it's not an option to stay down. You consistently have to get up and you have to achieve. And I love that mindset. That quote, I almost want to pin that. I'm not going to spray paint it on my wall as we discussed before, but I do want to pin it on my monitor and just read that every day, because I think it's such an empowering statement.
Yeah, and the most meaningful opportunities will always present themselves before an executive feels completely prepared. So this guy sees his opportunities. I mean, I feel like he's just grabbing them every chance he gets to use them as that next ring in the ladder to get him up. It's amazing to have that kind of hindsight without any advice from anybody, any mentorship. Just the simple premise of drive and the ability to not accept failure. So
amazing.
Yeah, and the full validation of his career occurred at a massive career fork. So he stated that post-grad, Hurst held 3 distinct options: execute a traditional law school track, accept a fully funded master's fellowship, or take a $12 an hour field training role helping launch an unvetted market footprint in Chicago. So he rejected the safe institutional tracks and packed his vehicle and drove 14 hours north for $12 an hour operational bet.
$12 an hour. When you have a finance degree on the wall, bro, are you kidding me right now? When I read this story, I was like, what is this guy even thinking? But like, what direction is he trying to go? He has all these fantastic opportunities to go in any direction, but here he is making this decision, JB. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
So he used a precise risk framework from Dr. Ben Carson. It's a textbook called Take the Risk. That's probably where he got a lot of this risk aversion and how to manage risk. That book was handed to him randomly by a professor, and the core diagnostic is evaluate the absolute worst case outcome versus the absolute best case outcome. So Hurst realized at his age, the downside was completely survivable. He engineered a safety net by verifying that he could humbly return to his university and asked him to honor the fellowship if the Chicago market collapsed.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this. The part about the worst case outcome versus the best absolute based outcome. I discussed this with my nephew today in regards to a job that he's looking at currently. And it's like, he was so worried about all the things that could go wrong. And I just was like, hey, bro, just envision if everything goes best case scenario and you get all the things that you're trying to achieve and what that feeling would look like. Now, I want you to carry that going into your interview, but I think this goes back to our risk aversion. This guy knows there's risk, but doesn't take it into account when he's making his great decision processes, JB.
Yep. So continuing on his story, unfortunately, the downside that he weighed, that hit immediately, apparently, when he went there. So 2 weeks after he arrived, a senior mentor who recruited him abruptly exited that company. So that's not cool. And Hurst, he explained that he was left isolated in a hyper-competitive metropolitan market where the consumers literally didn't know how to pronounce the corporate brand name.
I've had this happen to me, and by no means am I comparing my life to his, because he's on a completely different trajectory. But I will say, I've showed up to jobs where I've had a hiring manager that I was vested in, hired me onto the team, and then immediately within a month or two left the team. So I lost that contingency or that feeling of comfort to be completely in a team that I knew no one on, and it was basically having to try to build it from the beginning. So I know what it's like to be in those positions and how hard it is to want it to continue on, but also to continue to build great things.
Yep. And instead of classifying that as a systemic failure, Hurst explained that he executed a profound cognitive reframe. So he realized he was getting a free masterclass in building a business from the ground up using somebody else's money, which is, hey, that's not a bad day. So he treated the whole operation like his personal testing lab, and the mistakes that he had gave him real world execution data that you can never learn inside a classroom.
Yeah, but for him to have that type of mentality and not to feel that pressure, because now you're like everything all the stuff that you've been trusting in, the methods that you've been trusting in, and the individual that gave you that kind of mentorship and that goal, right? And then to be able to turn it and completely flip it and say, now the opportunities for me to make great things and do awesome stuff while also using somebody else's money. I honestly think I would collapse under that pressure, JB, because I just feel like the amount of responsibility and learning and then not having the opportunity to fail, because now you're not only betting your house money, but you're betting somebody else's as well.
Yeah. So this guy seems to just be able to walk through risk reward. So it's pretty impressive. And that brings us directly to his playbook that he actually published. It's called The 5 Seasons of Leadership. Download it. It's free. We don't get anything out of it, by the way.
We're not getting any sponsorship deals from this.
Yeah,
JB.
Probably just yelled at, but that's okay. No, but Hurst's model, it explicitly rejects linear career tracking. So he establishes a fundamental rule that professional evolution is cyclical, purpose-driven, and continuously repeating every time an executive transitions to a higher layer of operational scale. Pretty smart. So phase 1 of this cycle, it's the builder season, doing it all, which I felt this one. You wear every foundational functional hat, master every subsystem, and execute the work manually. The absolute goal is to forge a structural foundation that functions seamlessly when you step out of the room. Right?
I want to pause you just for a second on that one, JB. How do you do that? How do you wear all the hats and learn all the roles when you're stepping into an organization, bro? Like, that is like when he says masterclass in running a business, he's literally learning it as he's flying the ship, bro. Like, I would be so intimidated to walk in and have to wear every hat and also know I'm responsible for every decision that's made by the company. I know you had your own business. Did you feel the pressures of this?
Yeah, exactly. And how he broke it out, I wish I had seen this many years ago. It helps me understand. I was stuck in the builder season. I was trying to do all the different hats and functions. I was trying to do sales. I was trying to do reach out. I was trying to do 20 different projects at the same time. And it was a lot, even bookkeeping, sending out invoices, everything. I had to do it all. I needed to understand it all as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. But staying in that builder season, that was my personal downfall, because I needed to start learning how to ask for help and how to get out of that situation. So the absolute goal is to have a structural foundation that functions seamlessly when you step out of the room. And I didn't get to that point. And it seems like he's found that and identified that.
He's developed a framework that works, that can be repeatable and used over and over again in any situation. So it's agile and its foundations, right? So you can apply this in any direction. Please continue on. I'm very interested in this next phase.
So phase 2, the coach season, leading by example. You shift from manual execution, which we talked about with all the different hats and roles, to driving output through optimization of your people that you've hired, your diverse skill set. You can't have the same clone, like Chris Paul said. You have to have people that do different roles. So you have to optimize all those people. The influence completely replaces manual effort as your primary currency.
As opposed to steering the horse at this point, you're handing the reins over to some of the team members and instilling that trust, and then kind of moving over into that leadership position and delegating out more responsibility so you can take on more projects. Is that what I'm understanding?
That is exactly it.
Well, please continue on to phase 3.
Phase 3 is the architect season. So this is designing the system. So you cease managing individual tasks and begin managing macro structure. So you're looking 5 years out, 7 years out, 10 years out. So you engineer repeatable systems for operations, talent acquisition for your diverse team, and hard accountability, saying, hey, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Why you're not doing X, Y, and Z? The directive here is to stop chasing immediate fires and design systems that prevent them from igniting in the first place. So habits over hype, structure directs energy.
I like this part of the 3 that you've mentioned, this part right here, because of the fact that you're able to have those repeatable systems that are already ingesting and doing the things that you've built in from ingrained from the very beginning. Now, how valuable do you think this if you applied this step right here to an AI agent setup? Now, again, I'm not trying to bring AI back into the conversation, but I'm just saying.
Yes, you are.
I'm just saying from an AI, my brain immediately goes there because I'm like, it says repeatable systems for operations and talent acquisition, right? And so for me, it's like, what a great way to ingest it right in there and get those repeatable systems and those agents working for you to better complement your business model, JB.
Yeah. Yeah, because you move from, hey, I've developed the structure and framework. It's running in this manner. I can put someone in that seat to monitor and manage that while I step out and grow the business.
Those processes can redevelop themselves. They evolve with time, and you refine them and retune them. And now it becomes less and less overhead and more about taking on newer projects or research and development in other sectors, right?
100%.
All right, let's get to phase 4, JB.
All right. This is the strategist season, scaling vision. You transition from a direct operator to a macro orchestrator, aligning long-term growth strategy, complex team design, and cross-functional execution. So now we're getting complex, right? You got that cross-function and all that stuff, right? But the metric of success is ensuring every leader under your command understands the comprehensive why, not just the immediate what.
Yeah, this is where it gets extremely empowering for your team. So now I've established your directive for your branch or your subsection of my company. Now I expect you to run it as if it were your own. And it should have been that case all the way along. But now that you have the power and you have the skill sets to do it and you have the people supporting you, now it's just a matter of I'm coming directly to you for the answers that I need for your branch or your directory, right?
Yep. And from everything I've seen and heard from the webinar and read, this guy actually lives this. I've seen people and companies pretend to do this. This guy is nail on the head with this.
Well, and I think too, especially with what we do, I think it's pragmatic because we have so many people they go from engineering to management, and it's so hard to let those reins go because you're so ingrained in the process from the cradle to the grave process that it's almost near impossible to let the rein go and trust somebody else is going to take care of the horses and get them back to where they need to go. Right, JB?
Yep. So that was the strategist season. So our next one's phase 5, and that is the legacy season, leading through impact. So you have successfully scaled leaders who scale other leaders. The definitive goal of legacy is building ultimate freedom for yourself, your team, and a mission that thrives beyond your physical presence.
So at this point, you're saying I'm not even part of the picture anymore. I literally could be outside of the organization, and now they're just giving me the cliff notes on how we succeed.
Yep. And whether you like this guy or you dislike this guy of the next name I'm about to say, Elon Musk is living the legacy season.
Well, he has to, I would imagine. Yeah. And again, I'm not going to elaborate too much because we may have a lot of, depending on your camp of what you believe and what is right or wrong in the world. Yeah. I will say undeniably how you have 5 major organizations and you're the president of each one of them and running them cohesively while also working with the president directly for, months on end. I imagine that he has got this at a mastery level at this phase 5 step for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. All right. So we'll move on from that. And again, if you remember, Paul touched on that as well. Getting people in there, stepping up to the next higher level. So you're seeing it real time built by Chris and Brandon Hurst. He has brought in the framework. So you see how it's all kind of piecing together.
Yeah. This framework aligns perfectly with our episode 4, the deep dive into operational leverage and scaling versus personal grind. Most people get trapped in the builder season forever because they confuse personal grind and enterprise progress. And this is what you were just saying earlier, JB. And I understand why, because it's you always want to make it better. Always want to make it better before you like unleash it, right? And it's that constant level of perfection that causes you to fail. These type of people, they treat their exhaustion as a badge of honor when they are actually functioning as the ultimate bottleneck. And that goes exactly back to the point of you got to be able to delegate. You've got to entrust those people. They can't delegate those processes out because they're too ingrained in it. Yep. Now, don't get me wrong. I admire these people and their level of commitment to this work. Unfortunately, this becomes the standard for everybody on the team because they don't want to feel like they're carrying somebody else's weight, or the team's not being lifted by their dedication or commitment, JB. What do you think? I mean, have you seen this in real world? I feel like you can't escape this in our world of cybersecurity and such.
So my biggest concern when I see the scenario is burnout, straight up. I appreciate and applaud all the effort and work, but again, the work is always going to be there regardless. And there's always extra work somewhere that has to be done that can't be done. So to me, it's okay to delegate. Like we talked about, create a playbook, hand it off to a different team that can do it.
Right.
That's a more scaled up team. They have more headcount available, and just create a playbook and hand that over to somebody, whatever that playbook is. Well, like if it's how to run invoice, how do you put that on paper? Don't lock it in your head. Yeah. It's okay. You don't want to dwell there. Just give up the knowledge and move on from it.
Well, do you think that has to do with job security though? Do you feel like these 100%. People are holding on to these industry secrets because they're afraid if they let them go that they won't be considered valuable in the organization?
Yeah, I agree. But my question back to them is, when are you going to help me innovate and be the true intelligent person you are?
Well, and even to that point, though, and again, I'm not picking on intellect. Maybe it's more of a sign of they have trouble entrusting other people with their intelligence, right?
No. What I meant by that was they were hired into a position and they were a trusted person put into that position that I can delegate to. And if they're making their job complex, then they're doing a disservice to themselves to be able to grow. And at the end of the day, as a manager, like, hey, you're not really doing what I'm asking you to do.
How do you grow if you're not helping others, or you're not instilling those same types of qualities in other people by giving them responsibility or entrusting them with specific work? I guess, and I hate to say this because it sounds like it's a reward getting more work, but essentially what you're doing is you're allowing them to do what you're already doing. And to your point, it goes back to the burnout principle. If you're carrying too much load and you refuse to share that load, then you're going to burn out over time.
Yeah, and that's the biggest concern. Point. And then as a personal perspective, what are you doing with your career? You're going to burn out every single time you go somewhere. You can't blame the employer at that point. Well, so not you're just burning yourself out.
I don't want to dwell too far on this, but I guess what at the end of the day are you achieving? Are you doing it for yourself, or are you doing it because you want people to perceive you as the brainchild in the company, right? Is it a perception issue, or is it a work skill issue, right?
Yeah. But again, look, that was a great conversation. And it's just as simple as that, touching on his whole framework. It brings up a lot of areas you can discuss. And it's really impressive that he put this together.
To your point, he was doing this all while running the company. So not only is he building the company, wearing all the hats, he's writing a framework and creating it so that he can repeat it over and over again. You got to ask yourself. I think some people are just built differently. I'm really starting to believe that, because how would you even have that intuition to know to build that framework when nobody's giving you any insight? I'm not trying to take away from his education, but the fact that he's able to do it, and this goes back to the framework. He's just basically reapplying the framework over and over again. Yep. So consistency is key, and then learning and then applying those tiny refinements along the process.
Yeah, and then he also has operational laws of growth, which I think is going to help answer some of what we discussed. So those constraints are exactly what he saw, and his playbook outlines several laws of growth that we need to touch on. So the first one is the law of the lid. Your business will never outgrow your personal development. The moment an executive ceases personal optimization, they place a hard structural ceiling on the entire company. Think about that. We just touched upon that.
Always look for ways to optimize and improve yourself and your employees, and then set milestones and meet them, and continually setting goals to meet personally and professionally.
Yeah, but if you're locked in, you're not handing off things that you don't need, you're not optimizing yourself.
No, not only that, but you're not giving yourself the opportunity to get trained up or learn other skill sets, because you're so ingrained in the process that you're in survival mode. You're not in growth mode. You're in survival mode. And that becomes the standard. It's like, well, we're just barely surviving. So we have no time to codify process. We have no time to train. I think when we integrate a proof of concept or even validation of experience into the resume process, going back from skill sets that we were just talking about, right? How can you quantify those? How do we get a much better feel for work ethic and a better understanding of how the person answers their curiosity and provides creative solutions, right?
Yeah, and I think this might bring that to light. His next one is the credential fallacy. So credentials don't equal comprehension. Naming fit over ability is really key and paramount. So hiring purely for resume keywords without checking room fluency and cultural alignment is a guaranteed path to months of operational rework. And we touched on the 3 levels of fit, and this is what he's getting at. So skills can be taught, fit can't be faked. And that is very true.
I think when we integrate proof of concept or even validation of experience into a resume and an interview process, we get a much better feel for work ethic and better understanding how the person answers their curiosity and provides a creative solution. Intuition and critical thinking are hard skills to codify. And this brings up this entire point about what I was saying earlier is you can't teach intuition. It's personal drive. So you have to want to succeed and you have to be risk averse. And you have to be able to make those great decisions over and time again, JB.
Another one that he has for the laws is the silence paradox. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's fatigue. And leadership requires proximity and not emotional distance from your team. So you have to stay within the bubble. Like if you're the moon rotating around the sun, you're within proximity, what he's talking about as a leader. So if you're only managing high level reports instead of tracking the real relationships, dysfunction will find room to grow in your environment.
Yeah, I see this time and time again because sometimes we assume that no news is good news when in fact it's bad news.
Yeah.
Because nobody's communicating. I've walked into organizations to observe no chatter in Slack messages, little to no emails back and forth. The assumption is that everything is working as optimized, but then you start to peel back a few of the levels of that onion and you start to see the processes are stovepiped. So there's a whole bunch of people doing work that they shouldn't be doing, but they don't want to hand it off because they're afraid of losing that job security, or potentially they don't have anything codified to hand off and it's all done off the top of their head, which is even more scary because if they leave the organization or they're out for any reason, you lose all of that institutional knowledge, JB. I guess there's a big difference between surviving and proliferating, right? And being able to communicate effectively is the major difference there.
And what he's getting at is, if you break this down, he's talking about having, I almost said that oddly, but professional relationships with his team. And so that's the thing. And people miss that. They're kind of like, oh, I got to micromanage or I'm just going to be completely hands off. He's like, no. Have that rapport, have a good business and professional relationship with your team. Be in the know. That's what he's saying with that.
Once you become distant from the team, or they feel like they can't talk to you, which is even worse, right? Because then it's like, when I have reached out to you, you've shut me down immediately.
Yes.
Or made me feel like an idiot for asking. So now I'm afraid to even reach out to you. And then you get even more frustrated with me later because you're like, why aren't you communicating with me? Well, the last couple of times we integrated, you made me feel foolish for doing it. Yep. So, how do we get around that? And again, it just comes back to, regardless of whether you want to hear the bad news or not, I'm going to provide it for you and I'm going to help you make the best decision I can based off of the role you've given me.
Yeah, exactly. The last one here, the last law of growth is the thread constraint. If you're the common thread, you're the bottleneck. You're always that gate. You're always that person in the way they have to come to. So if every key approval, decision tree, or feedback loop funnels through you, your system is fundamentally broken. And that's so true.
The thing I find very unique in this point is that in most companies that I've worked at that have had a highly skilled employee, they're generally the bottleneck. And they don't mean to do it on purpose. The company's just been in survival mode for so long that they constantly are duct taping the solution or just keeping the dam from breaking. That this intellectual property genius is basically becoming that bottleneck because he has no time to deal with the everyday of training other people or giving them the institutional knowledge that they need, right? I've seen this time again. It's like you have the prodigal son within an organization and they're often can't be bothered. They can't be reached out to. They can only reach out to you. In essence, they're burned out. They're upset. They're angry. They're usually annoyed. You can tell these people. You'll see them a million miles away. And it becomes extremely frustrating for everybody involved in that picture. JB, have you ever seen this?
It's almost like micromanagement in a sense, really. It's like, I have to be involved in everything. It's like, why? You hired me. You trusted me to do this role. Enable me to do the role. Don't micromanage me. Trust me. That's the business relationship. That's the, hey, you put me in this right spot. Let me hand off these skill sets. Let me do something else. I don't want to do this one thing over and over. Maybe some people do, but there's a broader scope of things that I can do and enable me.
I think you nailed it right on the head. It's all about enablement.
Yeah.
Because if I'm only enabling the prodigal son within the organization or the prodigal daughter in the organization, and they're the only ones that can make decisions, now I basically rendered the rest of my team useless in the decision process, which is toxic in its nature. Whereas going back on the opposite side of that is now I'm empowering everybody by delegating efforts and roles and responsibilities to those team members to make them true change agents within the organization, JB.
And that's key to success. And it's really interesting how his frameworks, every single part of it, we're like, hey, let's jump on that and let's talk about that area. That's how good it is. I mean, the guy has a lot of experience and it's so simply stated, but then it just creates such great conversation. So now we've talked about Chris Paul, we talked about Brandon Hurst, gave you all the details and fun stuff that they've achieved and how they looked at their frameworks and how they do business. So the convergence of that data between the two, we have analyzed a 21-year veteran point guard and a dominant entrepreneur holding an MBA in finance. So they've never met as far as I'm aware, and yet they land on the exact same 5 core principles based on my interpretation, and hopefully I interpret it correctly. And please yell at us if I got it wrong. So the first one is reinvention is an active, ongoing skill, not a reckless leap. And the second one would be asset equity must always take priority over transactional cash. Third, you must ruthlessly deconstruct yourself as the bottleneck. And 4, treat structural failure as real-world tuition, fail fast concepts. Lastly, number 5, automate the task. Never automate the human connection. We touched on all 5 of those in different aspects, so this is great.
Yeah, let's address the obvious bias check we always run into this foxhole. It's incredibly clean for 2 hyper-successful leaders to look back from the top of the mountain and tell our listeners to bet on themselves. We are not analyzing the data sets of thousands of people whose bets fell straight into a black hole.
Right. And that's a vital pushback. And it's why we look at the math. Notice that neither of them actually said, quit your job, burn the bridges, and gamble on a whim. We never said that either. Paul built his second career infrastructure while his first one was paying him max revenue. Smart move. Hurst, he kept a strict contingency plan. He verified that he could return to his university and claim his master's fellowship if the market collapsed. And that isn't reckless gambling. It's a calculated edge.
Yeah, this would completely destroy the standard guru narrative. The motivational market always practices betting on yourself. Like you have to go all in on the red. Neither of these guys did that though, JB.
Yep. And betting on yourself isn't a blind gamble. It's running a sequence of small, data-driven, survivable moves with a safety net built underneath them. So confidence wasn't a feeling they magically summoned. It was simply the structural preparation they'd already executed.
Let's anchor this to our core focuses: AI advancement and the shifting labor market. Where does technology fit into the season's framework?
Hurst established our exact editorial stance, and it maps straight to our episode 2 module on leveraging tools. He noted that the single variable an artificial intelligence model or an agentic workflow cannot replicate is the advanced emotional intelligence required to deeply develop another human being. Again, we need people. People giving up processes and workflows, it's not a bad thing. We still need them. And as you can tell, which we've all seen in 2026, a model can draft your schedule. It can run your spreadsheets and it can build your initial workflows, which is great. But it cannot anchor your culture. It cannot navigate cross-functional friction or carry your values as a business leader. So the lesson here isn't to fear tools. It's to let the tool automate the task so you can scale your capacity inside the human elements of the coach and legacy seasons.
Translate that framework for the person listening who doesn't have a franchise or a max contract. What do they actually do on a Monday morning, JB? Come on, reel it in.
So first off, it's every single day as an entrepreneur, but we'll start with Monday.
Yeah, let's do it.
So owner thinking starts the exact second you stop asking, what is my immediate task? And that is so true. Mm-hmm. You have to start asking, what would I do if this asset were mine? Right? Reinvention starts with Paul's 4 words, constantly learning and asking questions, pointed directly at the part of your industry stack you've been ignoring. Where building beyond yourself can be as small as documenting a workflow or training a new hire so the organization survives your day off. We touched on that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Take Hurst's frame literally. So rejection is redirection, the setback is tuition, and the opportunity that looks beneath you can function as the bridge to the next level. So where you start is a fixed baseline variable. Decisions you make from this point forward are only the active metrics that matter. If you want to go into the fixed baseline and only stay there, that's a disservice really to you to grow in your field.
This kind of takes it from the peer view of the 5-meter target to the 50,000-foot view, right? So you can see everything the way it is at all levels, as opposed to just seeing things at your level, JB. All right, we've hit on some fantastic points this week, and I know that our listeners want to know where to find us, and they want to share the news with their friends and their peers, JB. Can you go ahead and give them a point of reference of where they can find us?
As always, it's thebrokenhandle.com, and all the socials is at brokenhandlepod. Go ahead and message us if you want, or like us wherever you want to listen to, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and we'll see you till next time.
That's what we know.
What you do with it is up to you.
Quick legal. The Broken Handle hosts speak personally, not for any current or past employer. Guests share their own views. Their appearance is not an endorsement of their services or business. Commentary on companies, recruiters, and hiring practices is opinion. Nothing here from hosts or guests is career, legal, financial, or medical advice. Consult a licensed professional for those matters.